This is Joe Galloway conducting an oral history interview with Mr. George Forrest on Wednesday, September 23rd at 1 p.m. We're located at the Association of the United States Army building on Wilson Boulevard in Arlington, Virginia. Sir, before we talk about your experiences in Vietnam, I'd like to get a little biographic information about you. When and where were you born?
A long, long time ago. No, Leonardtown, Maryland, which is about 45 miles south of here, in 1938.
Dang, you older than me.
Older than dirt, Joe.
Who were your family members?
Well, I have 3 brothers, 1 deceased. I'm the oldest living member of my family now. I have a sister, 3 grandchildren, 4 sons, all gainfully employed.
Ooh.
3 bachelors looking. And what was the rest of that, Joe?
Tell me about your mom and daddy.
Yeah, my father was probably the greatest man that I have ever encountered. And it took me a long time to figure that out. I grew up in a segregated community in southern Maryland. And when I saw my father doing the things that he did, I thought he acquiesced. And I left home at 18, and I told him that I would never come back to that place because you had to be an Uncle Tom to survive. Well, 30 years after whatever, I made those rude remarks, I went back to the county, worked in the county for about 9 years as the county administrator, and really found out what my father did. He was an educator, went to college when it wasn't fashionable for African Americans to go to college. He graduated from Hampton Institute, was an entrepreneur, but more than that, he had a vision. And this vision was that young kids needed to not only be academically proficient, but they also needed to develop a skill. So he established a school. And as fate would have it, I was principal of that school. In this county, most of the schools are named after towns. There are 4 schools that are named after African Americans: Benjamin Banneker, Frederick Douglass, Murray McLeod Bethune, and James A. Forrest, who is my father.
All right.
Interesting. And he was given an honorary doctorate of humanities. So here's a guy that at 18 I said was an Uncle Tom.
You didn't know.
Yeah, little did I know. But he was a great man. And I miss him.
Mother?
Mother was one of 19.
Whoa.
In the middle. So she raised the younger ones. But she was also an amazing woman. Had an 8th grade education, but insisted that we all go further than she did. So as a result, all of my brothers are college graduates. My sister is a college graduate and has a master's in education. So they were a unique family.
Mm. And you listed Leonardtown as your hometown.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And proud of it because, when I left there at 18, as I said that I wouldn't ever go back. Well, one of my many jobs I held, I was a football coach at my alma mater in Baltimore, Morgan State University. And I got fired from that job, which is not a disgrace because if you haven't been fired as a coach, then you ain't doing it right. And so the safest place for me to retreat was
home.
home to my mama's house. And they nurtured me, and I survived that setback and never looked back.
How did you come to be in the Army?
Well, in the 50s, at HBCs, which were land-grant colleges, all males had to take ROTC for 2 years. So once a week on Thursday evening, every male on campus put on their uniform, went over to the armory, picked up their old M1s, and we paraded around the campus, which was kind of neat because in those days uniforms were a chick magnet. So I had a PMS, professor of military science, who said, maybe you need to look into this as a career. I said, I don't want to do that. But then they told me that they paid you for the last 2 years. Yeah, for the last 2 years. So
what did they pay?
$27, but $27 bought lots of goodies for the weekend. So that's how I ended up. And
now you took your commission what year?
It's 1960.
1960.
Yeah.
So you had several years before you deployed to Vietnam.
Right.
What'd you do with those years?
Well, one of the more interesting assignments that I had was I was stationed with the Old Guard at Fort Myer. And as a second lieutenant or first lieutenant, I commanded the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I was the platoon leader for the Tomb Guard at the Unknown Soldier.
All right.
Yeah. So, and as if you're lucky in the military, you get a guy who's your chaperone and makes sure that you get taken care of. And this guy for me was a guy named Ken Pond. And in those days, each branch had their own separate assignment. And when I made captain, he said, "You need command." So he said, "There's this new division that's being formed, 11th Air Assault Division. So I'm going to send you down there and make sure that you get a line company. I don't want you to be a headquarters company commander. I don't want you to be some weenie job." So I went to Fort Benning, got a company.
This is 1964?
This is 1964. As you know, the president decided that he was going to commit an air mobile unit to Vietnam. And oh, by the way, it was the 11th Air Assault. But we're going to change the name to the 1st Cav. Right. And if you know the history of the Cav, this was the first time their colors had been brought back to the States from Korea since the Korean War, because they lost them in Korea.
Never did.
Never did.
Never did.
Never did. Good. I'm glad you corrected me on that, because I've been laboring under that false impression.
That's a slander.
Right. Well, we won't talk about the other slanders. But anyway, and deployed with the 1st Cav. Went over on we sailed out of Charleston in August of 65.
On the Maurice Rose.
Right. No, I was on the USS Buckner.
You were on the Buckner.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so my first tour in Vietnam started once we left the territorial waters of the U.S. So my first month of my first tour in Vietnam was spent on a boat.
On the boat.
On a boat. Yep. Landed at Queen Yan and then motored up.
What were your first impressions on landing?
Well, first of all, we had gotten lots of bad information. We thought that we were going to do classic assault landings, going over the side, down the cargo nets.
Gunning down everything that moved.
Right, gunning it, right. And when we got there, the 1st Cav band was playing Gary Oldman as we got off the boat. So it was kind of a letdown, but a nice letdown, because
better getting
shot than getting shot at. Yeah.
Okay, and you were assigned at that point. You were assigned to company command in the 5th Cav,
The
first of the 5th.
first of the fifth. In there were the brigade. I was in 2nd Brigade, commanded by General Lynch, who was a National Guard general. So he didn't get a lot of play. He wasn't high up on the list of. So all of his units were normally attached out.
Yeah.
Yeah, they went to the 7th or the 3rd Brigade and the 1st Brigade, which was the Airborne Brigade, as you know. So I never did a complete operation under the command of 2nd Brigade. So
Just didn't happen.
Which didn't happen. Yeah.
You were attached at a lot of places.
We were attached all over, and I'd say this often when I'm giving talks about being attached is like being the redheaded stepchild in a blonde family. Yeah, so.
What was your daily routine like once you got to OMK?
Well, first we had to establish base camp. So the daily routine was secure the green line, which was the perimeter around. So we did a lot of chopping of brush and burning brush and those kinds of things. And then at night we deployed on the line. I remember, good friend of yours, the first ambush that we put out was we were in a sector at the base of Chupong Mountain. I mean, yeah. Chupong, yeah.
No, it wasn't Chupong, it was Hong Kong.
Hong Kong Mountain, yeah. And so the first ambush needed an executive order to put out an ambush. So Charlie Black of the Columbus Ledger-Enquirer, a good friend of yours, was there and covered that story. So it made the news in the Ledger-Enquirer that this company commander had sent out this ambush and they had been successful. I think we may have been the guys that shot Maggie the Mule.
No, the Sergeant Major plumly admitted that it was the 1st of the 7th. And he put Maggie's corpse on the ration truck to be delivered to the 9th Cav.
Yeah, Stockton never got over that.
He never did. Your living conditions?
Not shabby, because we had creature comforts. We had showers and chow and good food, and the only
Hooches?
time. Yep.
Well, tents.
Tents, right. And being the company commander, and I had a supply sergeant who could find anything, and so I had a pretty nice tent with electricity and.
Whoa.
Yeah, so we had, he went down, I think we sent him down to Queen Yan, and he came back with a generator. Little did I never asked him where he got it. I just knew that it showed.
Stolen off of air bases.
Right, right. Some unsuspecting Air Force guy.
What responsibilities consume most of your time?
I think, Joe, just keeping morale up, because a lot of the guys in my company were due to rotate.
Whoa.
And their rotation date was December of that year. So here we are, August, and they're deployed in Vietnam, and they're supposed to get out.
They got 2 or 3 months left.
They got 2 or 3 months left. So a lot of morale checks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just keeping them busy. We did lots of roaming around the bushes. For the first month, we didn't fire a shot in anger. We were in an area called. It was so peaceful that it was nicknamed Happy Valley.
Happy Valley.
Yeah, and we'd walk up one side of that river, check every hooch, back down the other side, check every hooch. I did have the first casualty that I had was in Happy Valley. I had a guy who went out of the perimeter. This was a good friend of Freddie's, who either forgot the password or didn't remember or didn't say it loud enough. And so when he came back in, he was killed.
Oh, my.
Which was, a shock for me. I'm 25 years old with all this responsibility and not really sure of what I was doing. And the first dagger through the heart for me was have to write that letter to his parents that he was killed in the line of duty, which
not quite true.
Was not quite true. But they wouldn't let me send a letter home that said he was killed by friendly fire because for being a dumbass because he forgot the password. But he was a good soldier, and so that's kind of how it was.
Stuff.
Yeah.
What were your impressions of the Vietnamese people that you had anything to do with, civilian and military?
The civilians that we had were the Chu Hois. They worked on the Green Line.
Yeah.
We finally figured it out that these guys weren't all they were cracked up to be, because the mortar fire at night was really accurate. so what these guys were doing was walking off ranges.
Yeah.
To the hooches and whatever. So
they didn't put arrows on sticks, did they?
No, but if they had the fluorescent tape, they'd laid it on the ground and pointed to where all the CPs were. So
you weren't exactly trusting them.
No, not at all. Not at all. The military guys were different. We had a military interpreter who was probably the lifesaver for us, because none of my guys spoke Vietnamese. I mean, none of them had the privilege of going to language school. So he was the conduit that kind of kept us in touch with him. And I think for the most part, he was a loyal guy and didn't give us a lot of bad information.
Yeah. Your company was how many men?
Present for duty on any given day, between 100 and 120.
How many were draftees?
75%.
Wow. Did you notice any great difference between the draftees and the regular Army types?
No, because, I think they had all received the same basic training. Most of these guys had gone to basic and AIT. Their weapon skills were pretty good. I had some machine gunners who could knock the eyelashes off of a gnat. And mortar guys were good. The NCOs were excellent. And I had some guys who didn't let there be a distinction between the RAs and the draftees. Guys like Freddie wouldn't put up with you're not as good as we are because you're a draftee or you're regular Army.
Tell me about your NCOs.
I had some gems, and most of these guys. Fred Klug, and we'll probably talk about him later on, but Sergeant Rogers.
Freddie
Owens, Perp Lavender, but Shorty Rogers. These were guys who, I think this is what the Army was. These were truly the backbone of the Army, because I mean,
most of them Korean War vets.
Most of them were Korean War vets.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And I had a first sergeant Sergeant Johnson, who I had served with in the old guard, so I knew him to be an outstanding NCO. My lieutenants, a little different. I had one OCS, 2 ROTC, and 1 direct commission. The OCS guy was from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Larry Hess.
Yeah. Been to his grave.
Right. Hard charging, hot head. I know it all. And if you don't believe me, just ask me. My other lieutenants were and you'll forgive me, I suffer from old timers. That's somewhere between dementia and Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's from Berea, Ohio, and his name will come to me. The other guy that I really adopted as a son was a guy named Jim Patswall, and he was from Baltimore and had gone to Johns Hopkins to study medicine, and somehow, like most college guys, lost focus in some frat house.
Wound up drafted.
Rounded up being drafted. So, and the other guy was Lieutenant Francis. So, and my XO was Don Adams, Citadel graduate, who, if you know the Citadel graduates, they are wannabe West Pointers. And I apologize to all of the Citadel graduates who will see this video, because Don Adams was, without a doubt, the best, one of the finest officers that I had the pleasure of serving with. He was the funniest guy. He comes from a family of girls. He's the youngest. He was the youngest in the family, and his sister would send him stuff like an expensive leather attaché case.
You need one of those.
Yeah, you need
Vietnam.
one of those, and booties for when he slept at night. And so mail call was
hilarious.
A hoot. The first sergeant would come out and say, "Mr. Adams, you have a package," and everybody would gather around to see what Don's package was.
Pink pajamas.
Big, right? Yeah. And in fact, Don and I became so close. He passed last year. He was a Georgia Tech fan. I mean, Yellow Jackets could do no wrong. So, in my later years, we used to go down for Georgia Tech games every year. Yeah. So, yeah. He's from Stone Mountain, Georgia. Yeah.
What did you do for off-duty recreation, if you had any?
Well, we're in mixed company, so no, we had a little club, and lots of good food. I mean, we had a barbecue out back with steaks, and yeah, so we lived pretty good when we were in base camp.
Yeah.
So recreation wasn't high on the list. So we create recreation, like I remember once the NCOs challenged the officers to a wrestling match.
Oh my God.
In the company street. Well, Don Adams was a wrestler in college. So somebody challenged him, one of the bigger NCOs, and I said, "Well, Don, you go first, because if you whip their ass, then maybe they'll take it easy on me. So they did. And it was, the company street was a sea of mud. So it was mud wrestling in the company street. But those were their little kind of little sidebars that would keep us occupied.
Yeah, keep you half sane.
Yeah.
You have any specific memory of the popular culture at that time? Music, books, film?
None.
You hear a song and it brings Vietnam back to you?
Well, I mean, the songs that bring back memories are the ones that we knew, that we imported. My real association with the culture was when we went back in '93 and met these guys and really found out that they were human just like we were. I mean, we used to see them. I mean, we always made disparaging remarks. I don't ever remember anybody having anything nice to say about the enemy or the guys that we were protecting. Yeah. I mean, there were, and I, in hindsight, should be sensitive to that because I lived it.
Yeah.
But as Larry Gwynn once said in a quote, war is hell, and there is nothing glorious about it because behavior was, I mean, we weren't polite. There was no protocol. The object was to kill them before they kill you. Yeah. What was Patton's quote? Don't die for your country, make that other bastard die for his.
Die for his.
And this is why this is some of the reasons that I have some concern about where we are with our military today, because we're asking guys to do things when that's not their MOS. I mean, a 1-1 Bravo is not a nation builder. He's a destroyer.
He's not a diplomat.
Yeah, he's not a diplomat, and his voice comes out the end of his M16.
Yeah. And
so when you ask these guys to, not that they weren't kind on a one-on-one basis, because when we would see kids in the street, of course, give them chocolates and whatever as they took your watch, but but it was what it was. I mean, the frustration for me was we would do these med caps, and these were where we would go out and distribute medical supplies to the villagers and whatever. Well, the guys that we had shot in the middle of the night, in the morning we were going out and treating him, giving him pills and curing him so that he could shoot at us again the next day. So it was a little frustrating.
Now, we're going to come to it now and discuss the first major combat operation, and I would like to have your view of it from the get-go.
Right. Well, I should have been leery of it. When we were doing highway security in the Dio Mang Pass, we had outposts along the road to protect convoys coming from Quy Nhon to An Khê.
Right.
I got a call on the radio that a unit was heavily engaged in the Ia Drang Valley. The first of the 7th was engaged. So I was to assemble my guys on the highway, and we would be picked up. Well, normally that meant that the Hueys would come in and we'd load in and whatever. I look up, I get a call from a helicopter that says 2 CH-47s inbound, and the big Chinooks. And I'm going, obviously you got the wrong location, because we're supposed to be doing an air assault into wherever. Well, they landed, I jumped up on the skid and talked to the pilot, and he said, "No, we're supposed to be taking you to an LZ Columbus." And I said, "Well, do we have fire? Has the LZ been prepped and whatever? Where is it? Because I don't have any maps." And well, he said, "I'll give you the one map that I have to get in." That should have raised a flag right there. So I called my boss on my communications, and he said, "All I know, Captain, is you have been told to go from where you are into Columbus." So we off and on loaded onto these CH-47s and did an unsupported assault into Columbus.
Was there anyone there?
There was nobody there.
No artillery?
Nothing. No artillery, nothing.
No prep?
No prep, no recon, no nothing. So we get in there. Fortunately, the bad guys don't know. They either believe that these guys are absolutely crazy, or this is some kind of surprise maneuver, like General Dieppe said. I mean, General Ahn said when we left. But we went in there on. I mean, Joe, it was fortunately for us there was nobody there.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing because we would have been history. We landed. I was finally able to get a hold of Hal Moore's S3 and tell him where we were, and he said, "Well, you guys need to get in to Columbus. You're I think maybe 4 clicks away." So we walk into X-ray.
And this is on the second day of the fight?
This is on the second day of the fight.
November 15th, 1965.
Right. We walk into LZ.
What'd you see on the way?
Lots of dead bodies. And I said to my RTO, "This ain't looking so nice. I think we have just walked into hell." And when we got into the LZ, the first guy that I saw was Hal Moore. I knew Hal Moore's reputation. I had never served on him. I didn't know him at Fort Benning or whatever. And he just said, "Get your ass in the line and hold." And that's what I did. I saluted and went into the line. And we were there that second night when they really tried to take the place. I think that's you had been there one night already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was tired.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a shocker. I mean, I had imagined in naivete that what combat would really be like. Wasn't anything like I thought it was going to be. I mean, I was petrified.
Now you're in the line, and there are attacks underway.
They are attacking, firing. We're holding off. We were in my sector. We repelled, I know, at least 3 attacks or probes. They weren't major attacks, but they were pretty heavy.
Serious probes.
There were serious probes, and
you lose anybody in that?
Didn't lose anybody because we went into a position that had been vacated, so the holes were already there, so we didn't have to dig. And we were because we had we were supplied. We had all of our our basic load of ammunition. So we were set. We had all of our water, so it was we didn't lack for resources. So we were pretty solid. And I think probably presence for duty, maybe 97 guys, 98. All of my leaders, all of the NCOs, because we had this was the first action that we had actually seen, and I had had only one casualty prior to going in.
Now, the third day, Moore and his battalion are withdrawn.
Right.
And 2nd of the 7th has moved in.
Right.
What do they tell you?
Well,
is your battalion there?
No.
Just you?
Just me. Just lonely, little old me. Little old me. The guy, the second of the 5th commander was a guy named Tully.
Stuttering Bob.
Bob Tully, who I knew because we were in the same brigade. 2nd of the 5th, 1st of the 5th, and 1st of the 12th.
Yep.
Those were the 3 battalions under Colonel Lynch. So I knew Tully from before. Plus, his nephew, Buse, had B Company in my battalion.
In your battalion.
In my battalion, and his company was in base camp. It was the companies were arrayed A, B, C, and so Buse he was next door to me, and we had competition between us. So I knew Tully, but what I didn't know is that Tully was going to move out, and he wasn't taking me with him. Mm-hmm. In fact, another battalion had come in, 2nd of the 7th, under McDade, to replace Hal Moore. At morning briefing, they told us that we're putting in an arc light, which is a B-52 strike, and you have to get outside of that box, the 3 mile box. And so I'm thinking, okay, the helicopters are coming to save us, because they always came. I mean, we very rarely did we walk someplace and walk back, because the choppers were always there. However, the word came down that we were going to walk out of there, and I'm going, ladies, excuse my French, but I use, as my mother used to say, the old bad language. But being an infantry trained captain who saluted and did an about face and said,
and they've told you you're attached to this guy.
You're attached to the
2nd
of the 7th, and you will be walking out. Now, the McDade said, this is the order of march, and you're last. And I'm going, not again. Well, for me, this was a blessing in disguise, because on the way up there, we had probably limited intelligence. I don't know about the other guys, but I had no intelligence of what to expect or what had happened, because there was some fighting up in and around Albany that I read later or knew after the fact. But that morning, I had no clue of what was going on or what we were supposed to do, other than
neither did McDade.
Right. Right. Other than the fact that we needed to get outside of that box as quickly as we could, because the last thing I wanted to do was to be caught in a B-52 strike.
And you're the last guy
and
out
I'm
of the
last,
box.
And I'm the last guy out of the box. Well, having good NCOs, Sergeant Klug said to me, sir, we need to, because we don't know what's going on. So we need to at least have some kind of tactical integrity so that if something does happen, we're prepared. So we took the Benning School for moving in unfriendly areas. So you do the security and whatever, and you at forward, side, rear, whatever. Well, we had been walking for probably, because I think we left there probably maybe 10, 11. So we've been walking probably a couple hours, and the column stopped. And the word came over the radio that I want all the commanders to come forward. The lead element had either approached Albany or were in Albany. And so I'm assuming that the reason for us coming forward is he was going to, McDade was going to deploy the unit. I didn't question why he didn't use the radio to do that. So I saddled up my radio operators, Larry Hess and Jimmy Smith, and we walked up the column. Well, on the way up the column, I'm seeing guys sitting on their packs and smoking and joking and
eating C's
and
sleeping.
Picnic. This is where the story gets difficult, because I often think about, why didn't I, as an officer, say to these guys, you need to get up and at least be prepared for whatever, any unexpected. And I didn't do that. So when you first called me to talk about this book, I'm not only carrying around the guilt of the guys that I lost, but not fulfilling my obligation to those other guys who I knew were not doing what they were supposed to do. And so that's a demon that I'm just getting rid of. But when we get up to the front of the column, there's incoming mortar rounds, and I'm going, are those our guys, or are they prepping the LZ? And this is why are they securing the LZ? Because we would do recon by fire often. But when they started to fall close, I said to my two, we need to get the hell out of here. So we take off, back down the trail. My guys are with me, because if I moved, it didn't matter. They were there with the handset always. And I'm
Now, are you running?
I'm running.
Now, are you getting fire from the side?
I'm getting fire from the side. I see guys fighting. But I know that for me, the safest place
is with
with my guys, because I know that if I can get back to Rogers and Perp and Freddie and Larry Hess and Terry Martell, he's the lieutenant that I couldn't think of, and Jim Patswell, I'm good. I'm good to go, because I know that these guys will fight like hell to survive. Well, along the way, I'm thinking, And I would like to think that these guys were at least killed or wounded running and not suffer some kind of horrible death. And because of my anxiousness to get back, I assumed that they were there.
Behind you.
That they were there. And when I got into where my guys were, they weren't. And so they were 2 of the 17 that I lost.
Now, how far behind were they when they were hit? Or do you know where they were?
Joe, I don't know, because I think I was going pretty quick. And bullets kind of make you do that. They make you move a little faster.
Motivate you.
It's a motivator. They are big motivators. But because of habit, I assume, because I never had to look for them.
They were always there.
They were always there. And if I went like this, there was a handset for me to talk into. But I didn't need the handset, so I didn't turn back to see if they were still with me. And I think they were killed as we were running back.
Yeah. All right, you get back to your company. What do you do then?
Then my instincts take over, my command, training, whatever. We circle, we get in our perimeter, everything inside that circle is good, and heaven help you if you're outside. And we hunker down for the night.
You being probed?
We're being probed. We get a call about midnight that there are still some guys left in the ambush site. And we get this radio call from call sign Ghost 466. And he says that he's wounded, and there are some wounded guys out there. So I make the decision that I'm going to go out, go get them. Well, Fred Klug said, "Sir, you can't help those guys that are out there, and we need you here." So he said, "I'll go." And he took a medic, Daniel Torres, and stretchers for what I assumed were a couple of wounded that we were going to bring back. And so they get out there, and Klug calls me and he says, "Sir, we don't have enough stretchers. So somebody's going to have to stay out here and tend to the wounded while I bring the wounded that we can back."
And the walking.
Well, Torres says, "I'll stay." And he's armed with a .45 pistol, which is what the medics carry. And
didn't somebody leave him an M60?
I think he found an M60. Found it in the.
I know he had one.
He had one in the melee. I think he retrieved.
Policed one up.
Right.
He also policed up 20 or 30 wounded.
guys. Yes. Yeah.
That would have died out there.
That would have died, except for his act of bravery.
Incredible act of
Incredible act. If anybody should have gotten the Medal of Honor,
that was it. We tried to find him for years.
Daniel Torres. But he was a really shy guy who I don't remember ever hearing him speak more than in a whisper. He was just that kind of a gentle soul, and I can still see his face. But this was a special group. This was a special group of men, Joe. They, in spite of what the country thought about them, they were some hell of a soldiers. I lost 17, had 47 wounded.
That's 60% casualties.
Right. 2 lieutenants, lost Shorty Rogers, Sergeant Vaught, 2 radio operators. And I think the took me a long time. It took me a lot of years to get over the fact that, like Hal Moore said, I survived and they didn't. What was God's plan? I mean, who knows? And I think what helped me move past this was at one of our reunions, I was lamenting the fact that the number of guys that I'd lost, and I had a young 18-year-old come up to me and say, I'm here because you helped my father survive. And that helped me move past the guilt that I harbored, because it took you a long time to find me.
You hid well.
And it was because I felt like I had failed these guys. And when I think about them, it's hard because I had to write the letters. And the saddest of all of these losses was this kid named Ackerman. He was not an outstanding soldier, but he was a soldier. And during the battle, it was reported that he was wounded and that he was evacuated. Well, in December, 4 months after, or a couple of months after the battle, I get a letter from his mother that says she hasn't heard from this kid in a couple of months, and it was not like him not to write. Well, we started to check the hospital, and there was no record of him having been evacuated. So he was killed in the battle and laid out there until April of the following year, when Hal Moore took a group back in and we found his boots.
To find the 4 missing.
Find the 4 missing. And Ackerman was one of those guys. The hardest letter that the hardest thing that I have ever had to do was to write to that kid's mother and tell her that we left him on the battlefield. So it yeah.
All right. You make it through that night. In spite of Perp getting shot, coming back with the wounded.
This is Perp is one of the he is one of a delight. This guy is, and he was always like that. I mean, he was. If we were not in mixed company, I would tell you how he got his nickname. But we that night I finally got back in touch with my battalion commander, and he sent B Company, which was commanded by Buse Tully, the nephew of Colonel Tully, and we married up, pushed the perimeter out, spent a quiet night, and then the next morning went out into the LZ. A lot of guys. I don't remember the exact casualty count, but some of those companies ahead of me, like Jack Smith's company.
Oh, only 8 guys left.
8 guys left. Because they were in, this was a classic L-shaped ambush that I got into trouble when I went back to the advanced course, because they were teaching it as a meeting engagement. And I raised my hand and I said, if I have a meeting engagement like that, I don't want to meet the guy who arranged the meeting.
Yeah.
It was a classic ambush.
It was a classic ambush.
Yeah. And the combat effectiveness of that battalion was impacted. I mean, because like I said, Smith's company was totally wiped out, either in killed or wounded. And for us, the lesson I told my boss when I got back, please, 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 don't ever attach us to anybody without some assurance that when I get in trouble, at least somebody's going to help me. And the rest of the third brigade went back to Thanksgiving dinner. We went on to Bong Song and fought the next big fight. So we didn't load up our trucks and go back and have turkey and whatever. We went right up into Pleiku and over near the coast and fought. I think that operation was called White Wing Masher.
White Wing Masher or White Wing.
Right. Yeah. And so my battalion was the lead battalion in that operation. So we went right back into the fight. And at that time, I had guys who were 15 days from D-Rose. And to motivate these guys to go back out there. But I'll tell you what, Joe, it made us a better company. We were, after that fight, I would have put my company up against any company in the division. They were sharp. I didn't have to remind them to clean their weapons. There were no complaints about how much ammunition they would have to carry. There was no complaints about water, and there was no complaints about walking. And they didn't cuss the helicopter pilots when they didn't come, because the dust-offs, they were always there. And those were the guys that really helped evacuate, because some of the slick pilots, other than Bruce Crandall's 229th, they refused to come in. So it was I often make the comparison between motivating these guys to go back and fight. When I first went to Morgan to coach, they had a philosophy, and they still have it. We would play money games where big schools would book us to play. And I remember we went up to the University of Connecticut, and they scored 76 points in the first half.
Oh.
And I said to my guys, you know, I'm watching you guys, and I'm seeing you go back out there. There is no chance in hell that you're going to win this game.
They didn't quit.
But they didn't quit. And I wouldn't let them quit. And this was a carryover. This was one of the lessons that I learned from Vietnam is if a guy who has 5 days in country is willing to go out on a patrol, then you guys should be willing to hit somebody or tackle somebody. So it was it made an indelible imprint in my brain, on my brain, that you can go to hell and come out on the other side and be better for it. Because that's what we did. That's exactly what we did.
Coming out of that battle, what were your emotions like?
I was exhausted. I think fear drains your energy. And you don't realize it at the time. When people talk to me about this run, and it gets longer,
What are you up to, 1,000 yards now?
I'm at least 4 football fields. But fear is that too is a motivator, because people ask me, why did you do it? Did you do it for what? No, I was scared, and the only safe place for me on that battlefield that day was with my guys. And so the closer I got to them, my confidence gained. I gained my confidence. But I was emotionally drained for 2 weeks after that, because you're still dealing with the emotion of when you go in formation and Rogers is not there, and he's the first platoon sergeant and was always the first one up in the morning. He's not there. Sergeant Vaught is not there. Larry Hess, who was my OCS guy, is not there. My XO is not there because he's wounded. And so I'm kind of at a loss, because habit, I'm looking for these guys. And so the emotional drain was, and it really didn't go away until 1993, when we went back with the day one show. And I got to sit down with the guys on the other side.
Yeah. General Lon.
Yeah. And I cannot imagine what the emotional drain on them must have been, because like us, they were not warmly welcome when they went home, because they had lost this battle. And so
they didn't get to go home.
They didn't get to go home.
They get to fight.
They get to
for
fight
8 more
for
years.
And to I used to wonder how these guys must have been mentally so tough, because if you ever walk through an area after B-52s have been on it, I mean, the craters are bigger than this room.
Yeah.
And can you imagine looking up and seeing this
String
of
coming.
bombs, and they're all weigh 500 pounds?
Yeah.
One of the I'm TCM is doing a series on World War II, and they're talking about 5 Hollywood directors like John Ford who made movies for to boost the morale back home, and they showed the battle at Anzio. These guys were under constant artillery fire.
Laying on a bare open
Beach. I mean, I'm going, this is Vietnam. I mean, death is death, but
at least you got something to hide behind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you never had to look up at the sky. Whenever you looked up at the sky, you knew that it was one of yours. I mean, can you imagine looking up and here comes yeah.
No.
So
the desert's like that too.
Oh, I know.
There ain't nothing out there to hide behind.
I know. So the emotion of this, it scars you.
Yeah.
But again, the lessons I learned is that, as I said, you can go to hell and come out on the other side and be better for it. Your appreciation of stuff that you can't control just goes up 100%. I mean, I take nothing for granted. If I get in my car and I make it from point A to point B, I say thank you, Lord, because it is this span of time that we're here is so fragile.
Yeah.
So fragile.
And you can find amazing humor and stuff that ain't funny to anybody else.
Well, like the famous dance on the battlefield. One of my favorite pictures is of you and Bruce and me doing the can in hell.
In hell. Oh my. What's your most vivid memory of your year in Vietnam?
The men and how grand they were, how simple they were. They could find humor in anything, and the appreciation of the simple things. I mean, mail call. You would not. Yeah, you would. The delight in a guy's eyes when he got a box,
Yeah.
and it could be cookies, it could be booties, it could be briefcase, and the disappointment when you didn't get any mail.
Yeah.
So this appreciation of simple stuff, and I tell people all the time, the joy of dry toilet paper.
Ain't it great?
And when you and these are things that you take for granted. I mean, I go to the restroom and roll it off and waste it. and you could get literally, if you after the monsoons, after the rains came, if a guy had dry toilet paper, he could capture booty, whatever. And this is the simplicity of our needs and desires. Ice cream. I would eat ice cream until it comes out of my ears because we were deprived. I think we were in Vietnam 6 months before we had ice cream. Now, lots of steak, lots of beer, whatever. I mean, I can take them or leave them, but I will eat ice cream until the cows come home.
Trying to catch up.
Trying to catch up, make up for lost time.
Describe for me the best day you had during your Vietnam tour.
I think when I relinquished command of my company, there were guys who cried because they didn't believe that anybody was going to come that would take care of them like I took care of them. And for me, that was worth all of it. I mean, and it's, and so for a lesson for me has been every job that I've held since then, I have put the people first. Mission is important. Don't get me wrong. You have to do the mission, but if you don't take care of the people who have to do the work, they're not going to take care of you, because it's not out of patriotism that a guy gets up out of his warm, safe hole and goes out on a mission to save some other guys. It's about the love that they have for each other and the respect that they have for you as a leader. So if you ask them to do it, I have never had a guy to refuse to do what I ask him to do. Because I used to tell him, if you don't want to do it, I'll do it. And I used to tell my employees the same thing. I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself. And so the best day was when I left the company, and to know that I made a difference.
You may have already done this, but describe for me the worst day you had.
When we got that order that we were going to go someplace that I didn't have a clue of how to fix it if it got broken, and not having some kind of control over the destiny of my guys. That's worse. It's the worst feeling that I have ever had. And I promised myself that I would never let this happen again. Even in the jobs that I've had since, when it got to the point where I couldn't control, and not that I'm a control freak, but if I can't determine where we're going to go and how we're going to get there, then I leave. The last job I had was a political one. And I worked for 5 elected officials. And we had done great things. We brought St. Mary's County out of the dark ages. And when the new board came on, they looked at the budget and said, this budget is too complicated. I want it to be so that a 3rd grade child can understand. And I'm talking about a $1 billion budget, Joe. And I said, I can't do this. And so I submitted my resignation. And never looked back.
There it is. How much contact did you have with your family back home while you were in Vietnam?
Well, thanks to Charlie Black, who he would come and go. So and we got to be good friends. So he would take my mail personally to my house, and so he and my wife became good buddies. And so there was no lack of communications. Now with my family in Leonardtown, it was a bit different. we didn't. My father is a passionate man, but he's not a writer. He doesn't. Until my grandchildren came along, he was not an expressive kind of guy. I don't ever remember my father telling me in my young days that he loved me. And if you had seen him with my grandchildren, you would say that this old guy is mush. And so the communications between us were strained because when I left home, I've relayed the conversation that we had. Well, and I didn't go back for a long time and then when I did go back, he and I became really close. He worked until he was 94, and he worked for the county, and so I used to sign his paycheck. And we'd ride to work in the morning, and I would tell him, I would say, now, if you're not a good boy today, we're not going to pay you.
Nepotism.
Nepotism, yes. But so communications between my immediate family was
letters.
Letters, yeah.
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 Describe your return home at the end of the tour.
Well, that wasn't the worst day of my life, but it was right up there.
Really?
Right up there. The first time was not too bad because we didn't have to go back into the community. My first tour, after I came home, I went straight to Fort Benning.
Yeah.
To advance course. And so there we were the warriors coming home, and there was signs and whatever. My second tour, I went from an ROTC assignment to Vietnam. So I left my family in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Oh my.
And so just being up the road from Madison, the hotbed of it was when we landed in Chicago, the USO people told us, you need to take off your uniforms.
Get the uniforms
you need to burn those uniforms, and no, you need to get in civilian clothes, because landing at Milwaukee International Airport is not going to be a delight if you're in uniform. I never had anybody to spit on me or whatever, but I know guys who did.
Yeah.
I know guys who did.
Did you change into civvies?
I changed into civvies. And but you know, Joe, when we talk about the benefits of war, when I look around at what America does for returning veterans, you cannot go to a football game or a baseball game when they're not honoring some veteran. Totally different. We couldn't get tickets to see the Green Bay Packers. But again, the welcoming, the all of the family support. When we went, I remember I had friends in Kansas who were stationed at Fort Riley. They made the families move off posts. They could not stay in government quarters if their husbands were not stationed at that base.
Yep.
If that happened today,
did that at Fort Benning.
If that happened today, or to send a taxi driver to bring a telegram that your son has been killed,
Or your husband is
or your
dead.
husband is dead. Unheard of.
Yeah.
Unheard of today.
But how would you like to have done 6 combat tours in Vietnam?
No.
I don't see how
These guys are, they're not. I mean, this is why there is so much PTSD. I mean, what do you have to look forward to? And the other problem is, and here's where and I apologize to all the computer guys and whatever, there's too much social communications. A guy can watch his wife have a baby and then go out on operation. Now, where do you think his focus is going to be?
Yeah.
On that operation or the health of his wife? Or his wife calls him up and says, honey, the gas bill hadn't been paid, so they're turning off the gas.
Yeah.
His company commander comes in and says, okay, we're going to go after Saddam Hussein in the morning. He's thinking, I got a gas bill that's going to be turned off, and you're talking to me about going after Saddam Hussein?
Too much communication.
Too much communications.
Did your experience in Vietnam affect your life afterward?
Absolutely. I came out of Vietnam a stronger person, a better person. My listening skills were, my appreciation for hard work, courage, patriotism, all of those things changed because I lived it. And and I've talked about this, the appreciation of small things. When I worked in county government, I used to have to make guys take leave because they thought their jobs were the end all to be all. One of my sons was a hell of a football player. He played at Virginia Tech in the days when they were producing guys like Bruce Smith and Don Schrock, and I never saw him play a football game, either in high school or in college, because I was chasing this job of I'm going to be the next chief of staff of the Army or whatever. The hell with that. If my grandkids have a Tiddlywinks game, I'm there with a camera. And so I tell people all the time, you got to enjoy those family members because they are going to get away. I mean, I'm in the process of losing my granddaughter now because she's found out that
This is your fashionista?
This is my fashionista, who is an attractive young woman who has started to realize that there are more important things than grandfather. and they be boys.
Oh, dear.
And so now she doesn't have, I don't get all of the affection or the time that she has allocated to me. So I'm slowly being phased out of the picture.
Is there any memory or experience from your time in Vietnam that has stayed with you through the years and had a lasting influence on your life?
Yeah, and I think I've kind of covered it.
Yeah.
The loss of those 17 young souls who knows what they could have or would have been. Who knows if the next great discoverer of some scientific marvel was killed in the Battle of the Eardrang? What if the next great trumpet, Miles Davis, was killed in the battle? And this is in all wars. I mean, war shouldn't be fought by young guys. It should be fought by old guys who've made their contribution. Donald Trump should be fighting a war, not talking about it. And it really just ticks me off when these guys are, everybody now is talking about boots on the ground. Well, who are those boots gonna be?
Who's in them boots?
Who's in them boots? They're not sitting in the halls of Congress. They're not sitting in the president of Israel. They're not the president. Who are those boots going to be? And how many times do you have to send the boots and not have an impact?
Over and over.
Over and over and over again. I mean, we're seeing the names that are being mentioned in the news now. They're not new names. These are places that we've already sent guys.
Yeah.
The tragedy for me was after 53,000 deaths on our side and a number of triple that on the other side, when we went to Vietnam in '93, we didn't change a thing. They're still herding ducks. They're still plowing with oxen, and they're still doing rice by hand. So what did we change? And if you go to Saigon, you can call it Ho Chi Minh City if you want, but it is the Saigon. They're still overcrowded with sickolos and whatever. And we died for that. You go to Hanoi, and the people in Hanoi are still in the same oppressive state that they're in. So what did we do? Did we unlike World War II, America changed Europe for the better. I'm not sure we changed. We certainly haven't changed the Middle East, and we certainly didn't change Vietnam. We certainly didn't change Korea. So what was this all about?
Maybe we did change Korea.
Well, yeah, and I'll withdraw that statement. But in these modern episodes that we've been in, what did we change, Joe? I keep asking people, tell me what we did that my grandchildren or my great-grandchildren will say, this is what my grandfather did, and this is the impact that he had on the world. I mean, he tells a good war story, but and you give him 2 beers and he can embellish those, but what did he really do other than impact and develop some friendships that will last forever? Did we make America better? I'm not sure.
Did your experience in Vietnam affect the way you think about veterans coming home from combat today?
Yeah, I'm jealous. Yeah, I'm jealous. And this is petty, because I would have loved to have been invited to see the Green Bay Packers when they were in their heyday. I had to stand in line just like everybody else. Now, if a veteran walks into the RFK, he'll get a front row seat, and I'm jealous. I'm jealous. Although the Redskins are probably giving away tickets now, but
yeah, probably. How do you think the Vietnam War is remembered in our society today?
It's forgotten. It's
old history.
It's in when I was principal of a high school, and another job that I had, my mother says that when are you going to get a job that you can keep? But they didn't teach Vietnam. That was omitted from the history lesson. It was, oh well, they went over there and they killed babies, and Cali burned down villages and whatever, and they smoked a lot of dope. And
about that much in the textbook.
Right. And they smoked a lot of dope, and played loud music. That's it. That's it. And that's how we will be remembered. It is the war that the military didn't lose. We didn't lose the war. We were politically eliminated from it.
Only good thing is that I did go into some bookstores in Vietnam my last trip and look at some of their books.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have much more than that about our war either.
Well, you remember when we were in Hanoi and we went to that museum where they had the mock-up of the Dien Bien Phu?
Yep.
And they showed that timeline.
Yep.
From their beginning to where they were now, and we occupied about that much space.
Yeah, the French were about that much.
About that much. Because prior to us, they'd fought the Japanese, they'd fought the Chinese, they'd fought each other.
The Chinese
for 15 years. And so this little blip that we put on there is minuscule.
Yeah.
And the other fact that hit me when we were there is, remember that somebody made the statement that the average age of the Vietnamese in 1993 was 26 years old?
Oh, yeah.
So they have no visual memory.
70% of the people in the country now are born since the war.
Yeah. So, yeah. And it's going to be the same way in Afghanistan. These people will not remember our contribution. I mean, we're in terms of what the Russians did to them.
We're pikers.
Yeah, we're saints. We are saints. Because, but nobody will remember that because we don't even remember it here.
Well, the Afghan tribesmen, they
Well,
kind of
they-
like being bombed, I think.
Yeah, and our political leaders across the board, and I am an Obama admirer. I would go wherever he sent me, but the rest of these guys, their memory of history. Trump is talking about building a wall. All he needs to do is look at the wall that they put between the East Germans and the West Germans. How effective was that?
Yeah.
I mean, it is this adage of if you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat it. We're doing it.
Yeah. We got some really ignorant folks.
Oh, at least 16.
Did you take away from Vietnam more that was positive and useful than you invested in blood, sweat, and tears?
No, because my life before Vietnam was mundane. And after Vietnam, and after I retired, I've had 7 jobs. I was I was a college football coach, and the things that I learned in Vietnam made me probably last for 9 years in that job. I was principal of a high school. What I learned in Vietnam about young people and what they want and what they need and what they will do if you give them the right set of motivations. I learned all of that from Vietnam. I was a recruiter for a defense contractor. And if you market it, people will buy it. I learned that in Vietnam. Because if you say to guys, when we get back from this operation, they're going to be dancing girls, they will speed up the operation and be 100% effective. I was a county administrator, probably the hardest job that I ever had because it was so political. But the thing that I learned from Vietnam is if you train your guys and you give them a purpose and a mission and an opportunity for advancement, again, they will do whatever. And if you look, don't always go outside, because one of the things that government has a tendency to do, at least this particular government, was to go look for the biggest and the brightest and the best and whatever, when all you have to do is look within your organization. Some of my better NCOs came from within my organization because I had a hand in training them. And you create them in your image and likeness.
Yeah.
So, to answer the question, I took the after effects, the things that I learned in Vietnam have made me a better person, made me a better leader, and made me more successful. Because I don't know the meaning of failure.
You've been to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial.
Yes.
What are your impressions when you go there?
Initially, Joe, I was disappointed. First of all, because all of the other monuments in Washington about soldiers is in this, they are above ground. They are pristine in white and whatever. Here is this monument to us. First of all, it's on the ground, and it's black. And in our society, black connotates bad. White is good. But after going there and seeing the emotion that this piece of black granite sends off, I think it's probably the best monument in the whole city of Washington. And so I've done a 360-degree turn on that.
Mm. Have you heard about the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War Commemoration Project?
Yes.
What do you think of that?
I don't know enough about it, but I know that whatever we can do to educate the American people about how great these guys were, and I'm envious of the World War II guys too, because they're called the greatest generation. But I would stack my generation against those guys in terms of guts and glory and patriotism and commitment to country. I think we are right up there with the rest of them. And I think this project, if
it's meant to welcome them home at last.
Yeah. And Maryland I participated in a ceremony last Veterans Day, and the governor declared one day as Welcome Home Veterans Day, and they had sponsors and they had a parade, and it was the first parade in 50 years that was dedicated to Vietnam. We didn't have to share the stage with. I mean, the most of the Memorial Day parades you share, and I know this sounds selfish, and maybe one of the beauties of getting old, or vintage, as my grandson likes to refer to me, is you can say whatever you want, and people will think that, oh, well, he's old. So it's okay for me to be jealous of these guys now and to be jealous of the old guys, because they all had parades. And I didn't get my parade.
Get your parade.
But I finally got it. So that piece of the jealousy is gone away.
Thank you.
You know I love you.
George Forrest.
You know I love you, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah.